We're back. Welcome to part 2 of the interior tutorial. This is where we finished up at the end of the last video. We made our room, our isolated, actually looks like a trailer. It's a trailer bathroom. Yeah, we finished obviously making the room. We put in the windows, we put in the cabinets. And also these objects we mentioned at the end of the last video. I showed you briefly how you could model them yourself, or you could get them off the Blender Guru website. If you click the link in the description, you can download them there as well. So other than that, it's untouched. And in this video, what you're going to be doing is, well, first of all, we're going to be throwing in some light so that we can actually see stuff. And then we're going to be adding materials. So some of these objects already have materials, which is nice. I think the add-on gives you some default materials, but we're going to be putting in some marble tiles on the floor, creating a marble countertop, and adding some marble tiles to the wall on the left-hand side there. Very marbly. And then as well as that, to end off on, we're going to put some trees outside. So I'll show you how to do that. And we'll be learning a bunch of other stuff as well, like how to create proper glass for architectural rendering, framing the camera, getting the lighting right, you know, all that good stuff. So let's get into it, and let's start with the sun, or the light, right? So for the lighting, I'm just going to quickly add in a sun lamp. Let's do that. Sun. And I'm just going to rotate it so that it comes in from the side windows, obviously, like that. And, you know, this is a little bit sort of compositional, but, you know, you want to start thinking about it anyway. But, you know, you want there to be a focal element of the scene. And so lighting, you know, contrast is a way to get it there. So I'm just going to rotate the sun, and looking at this window here, I can see where the edge of that window lines up. So I know that if I put this about there to there, I would get a nice blast of sun in this sort of area. In fact, I might just go a little bit more. There we go. So it's right on the sink, which is nice. And then from that angle, yeah, maybe a little bit up. There we go. Good. Awesome. Okay, so I'll just increase this to 5, the strength of it. And yeah, let's do some rendering. So I've got GPU rendering, and I'll turn on border just so that it's only rendering within this area. And let's see how it looks. Okay, now this looks pretty good. And the reason for that is that this add-on, the one that we've been using, the where we created the windows, it's already attached to it a glass material. And if we have a look at that material, if we go to the node editor, bring up the materials, you'll see that there's a number of materials applied to each window. There's the window material, so that's the edge of it, like the white paint. The plastic material, I think that's like the inner part. The one that we're interested in is the glass. So glass for a scene, for an interior scene, especially for windows, is very important because you've got light that is shining through the glass. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of you know, we might as well, yeah, all right, I'll just show you this then, right? So a lot of people make the mistake of just having a glass shader like that, and then they connect it in to their material like this. Now, this sounds like it would be right because it's a glass object, obviously, but when you've got light shining through it, what Blender is then trying to do is it's trying to calculate. You can see here, like, look how horrible that looks. You've barely got any light coming through, and the ones that are these tiny little fireflies. So it's absolutely horrendous, right? Now, the reason that this is happening is, yeah, like I said, the light is shining through it. And so it's trying to cast shadows through from the glass into the scene. So it's throwing shadows into the scene. Well, it's shining through the glass, but it's throwing shadows, and it's trying to do caustics, which is something that Blender's not very good at, the Cycles rendering engine. So generally what you want is you just want the glass to look like glass so that when you look at it, you can see the reflection of the rest of the stuff in the bathroom, but the light to pass through it as if there's nothing there. So the Windows add-on thing, the Archimesh add-on, the material it created was this one right here. which is okay. And honestly, there's a bunch of different ways you can go about creating an optimized architectural glass material, but this isn't the one that I would use because I don't really think we care about refraction. Gloss, I think it can sort of darken it a little bit. Anyway, so the one I'm going to use, I'll just delete this. It's going to be very similar, but I'll show you the one I'm going to use. So we do actually start with a glass shader, but what we do is we run it through a mix shader, just like what was there before. And then underneath here, I put a transparent shader, right? And then at the top here, I put a light path. Okay, so this is, again, pretty similar to what was before. So we want the glass to only be visible to the camera, essentially. And then everything else to just have the transparency, like, just make it look like there's nothing there at all so that the light can pass through it. So what we want to do is we want to take the shadow ray, the diffuse ray, and the glossy ray. So these are basically, I mean, we don't want to get in too technical, the light path node, but essentially you're telling Blender that if it's a diffuse object, if it's a glossy object, or if it's going to be receiving a shadow. I think this is, I could be wrong, this is the way I'm explaining this, but this is the way I understand it. If it's any of those three, then we want it to use the transparent shader. So you can take the shadow like that, which is what was there before, but to combine it with these three, what you need to do is add in a math node like that, leave it set to add because that's what we want, and then set that to diffuse. So now we've got two, they're being added together. And then we just want to duplicate that one more time. And then the glossy shader, glossy ray in there. And then plug all that into the surface right there. And now if we have a look at this, you should see that there should be very few fireflies. If there are fireflies, it's because it's reflecting off stuff in the scene and it's probably trying to do coarse. We'll get to that in a second. But you can see that the glass still looks like, it still looks reflective. It still looks like glass, which is good. But the light that's coming through it is like there is nothing there. So if we just have a look at just this light here, just to show you, just to prove that it is actually working as expected. If I just forget all that glass stuff, if I just connect this into the transparent, like that, you can see that the lighting is identical. Okay, so that's basically, but you can see if we did that, you wouldn't see any reflection on the glass at all. So that's not good. So if we connect this through our elaborate little setup here, you can see that it works. Now, this is the node setup that I've used for years to make architectural glass. But I'm curious if anybody out there has a better node setup, please let me know. I actually asked on Twitter and I asked on Reddit if anybody could suggest a better node setup, and nobody could. They said that they've been using this setup as well. So if anybody does have anything, feel free to send it my way because I'm, always curious to see that, there's other people that think of different ways of doing things. So let me know. It's one of the cool things about doing tutorials. You can make requests and hopefully people will fulfill it. Anyways, so that's architectural glass. Yay. Now you can see here actually that this window, there's a problem. It looks like it's just reflective. That doesn't actually appear like you can't really look through it like the other one. And the reason for that, and this is, I think it's a bug with the actual Archimesh add-on, is that it creates two windows here, right? But they're identical, which is a problem because this plane here, this window pane, it has one normal facing, it can only face in one direction. So this window, if we turn on normals there, you can see that this one is pointing in the right way. So it's pointing towards the camera, which is where you always want normals to be. This one though, if we turn on normals as well, you can see that it's pointing the wrong direction. It's pointing outwards over there. So you can fix that very quickly just by selecting that plane and hitting Control-Shift-N. And now it's pointing inwards. Okay, so again, I think this is a bug. In fact, I'll probably suggest it to the creator. I think he messaged me on Twitter. I might reach out to him there and just let him know that those should be pointing inwards. Maybe I'll let him know about the little windowsill problem as well. But anyways, so if you fix that, then if you do the little render again, you should see that the glass looks like the other glass and doesn't have that horrible blackness to it that it had before. Right, good. That looks pretty good to me. Cool. So we've got sunlight, but it looks like we're in a upside down, topsy-turvy world where there's, this isn't a real, or maybe it's like space, like we're looking out of a spaceship, because it's this gray atmosphere, and the only light we've got coming in is the sun. Whenever you just have the sun, yeah, it looks like space because there is always sky lighting that is coming into the scene. So that's very easy to do. You just use environment lighting. So you go to the world panel over here, and you could, if you wanted to, you could use a blue color like this. You could crank that up. In my case, what I actually want to do, since I've already got it, I'm going to use Pro Lighting Skies, which if you don't know is an add-on you can get on Blender Guru that automatically adds in an HDR sky into the scene. Oh, I think I've got to reset because I think I had this going before the recording started. Hang on a sec. All right, we're back. It was making the sky desaturated because I think the cache or whatever when I saved it was saved into it. Anyways, I assure you it's a good add-on, easy to use. Anyways, so I'm just going to select a sky here. I really only care about the lighting, like getting that blue sky. So I might just pick something that is mostly cloudy, since that's the sort of style we're going for. So I'll pick that one right there. That looks pretty good. And then I'll just make sure that the sunlight is rotated away because we're using a physical sun, so we don't actually want the sun from our thing. So that'll be right there. That's good. And then what I'll do is I'll set the sunlight value way down, and then I'll turn up the sky. So really, like in architectural interior scenes, you really need to crank up the lighting generally, like way more than what you would have outside, because you've got just a little bit of light coming in through windows. So you've really got to amp it up. So I'm just increasing this. I might even go higher than that. I don't know yet, but something like that. That looks pretty good to start with. Okay, nice. So we've got the lighting. I mean, we'll probably adjust it a little bit later on. Now let's do some materials. Yay, materials. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the floor right here. So I'll move the camera down just so that we can focus on the floor solely by itself. I'm going to hide these, so I've put all my models on a separate layer by itself, just so that I can also just have the bare scene so that when I want to do stuff like materials, I don't have to slow down because it's rendering all that stuff. So you could choose a whole bunch of different materials for your scene, obviously. Wood, concrete. I mean, it's pretty crazy nowadays. Architects throwing a whole bunch of materials at everything. But in our case, what I'm going to do is use a marble material. So I mentioned we're going to use marble on the floor, marble on the walls, and a marble countertop. So that's to really keep this scene consistent. So we're going for a sort of traditional style home. So sort of like a luxury sort of look. So that's why I'm using these materials. You can obviously use a whole range of them. So for the materials, I'm going to get them from Polygon, of course, since it is, of course, my website. So we're going through Polygon, and I'm going to go click on marble. So yeah, in fact, actually, I should explain the whole reason for doing this tutorial and even making this scene was because we released this new pack of marbles. Because I noticed myself online, like if you go to a lot of other texturing websites, the texture, like the marble textures are generally pretty shoddy. And the reason for that is marble is so hard to find in the real world. Like you have to literally go into somebody's home to try and photograph marble, because finding it outside is just, it's unless you know the manufacturer or something like that. So a lot of marble textures, they're very rare to find, and they're often also cut into really small slabs. So it's like a really up close photo, which isn't good for a large scene. So what we did is we actually created these 16 textures here from scratch using Substance Designer, and then match them with a real world reference. So they look like real textures, they're ultra big, and they've been customized specifically for architectural use. So this is the one we're actually going to use for this tutorial, which is a sort of a parquet, how do you pronounce it? Parquet? I'll just pronounce it like an Australian. Parquet texture. So they're at this sort of like diagonal sort of thing, which looks really cool. And it's I noticed it a lot as like a trend in interior design right now. So this is the one we're going to use. So I'm going to download the diffuse. You could, because there's displacements and gloss and everything, you could download them all in one like that. but I really only need the diffuse and the normals. So I'm just going to grab the normals as well. And there we go. Okay, so that's going to be our floor texture. So what I'm going to do is go to our floor here, go to the materials, open up the node editor, and let's delete all of this. And the first thing I'm going to do before I add in, actually, let's just add in these images. All right, so, okay, so if I just click this, drag this into Blender from Chrome, we've added in that one, and then I'll click this normal, and I'll do the same right there. Very quick way to get images into the node editor. Now you could, drag this into a diffuse, set up the glossiness and all that kind of stuff, but a real material like a PBR material, you should have a lot more going on. So if you want to check out my PBR node tutorial, you can check it out by clicking the top right-hand corner of your screen right now, and that'll take you over to the PBR tutorial where it talks all about what it is and why it's important. But since we've already got it, and if you don't have this, by the way, you can get this from Blender Guru as well. Click the link in the description and that'll take you there. But we're going to use the PBR dielectric material. So this is a node group which we set up in that tutorial. So if you want to make your own, you can do it in there. But honestly, I just use it because it's simple to use and most other softwares already have this equivalent already set up. So we're just bringing that functionality to Blender. So I'm going to plug this in there. I'm going to use the color and drop that into the PBR dielectric, color input there. And then I'm going to take the normal map, which is this one, and drop that into the normal input. Then of course you need to set this to non-color data and then feed it through a normal map node so that Blender can actually read it. All right, so I'll need to split this view, go to the image editor. And before we do the render, actually, I guess I could just show you how this looks right now with our floor material all polished up. Okay, so you can see it is appearing on there and you've got the normal maps appearing like they should, but the tiles are absolutely huge and they are in the wrong direction. So I want them to sort of be going forward, which is another subliminal compositional thing to sort of guide the viewer's eyes in one direction. So I'm just gonna, I don't know, how big do I want it? 4? Let's try 4. That's pretty good, actually. Times it by 4. Nice. Okay, it's very hard to see, by the way. If you're trying to struggle looking at the YouTube video, I'll zoom in there a little bit so you can see it. Okay, that is pretty good. And by the way, the roughness and reflection, you can set if you're wondering why there's reflection when the reflection is set to 0, it's because this is extra reflection on top of the Fresnel reflection, which is in every material. So setting it to 0 is sort of like standard, but there will always be reflection on every object. So that's what this is. All right. So now I do actually want it to look a little bit more realistic because no floor is ever this shiny or this perfect. So what I'm going to do is on Polygon, I'm going to grab I'm going back to the category, and I'm going to click on Surface Imperfections. So what I want to do is I want to create the look of like it's been walked on by feet. So we've actually got this floor smudges texture, which we created specifically for this purpose. Because I remember when we were doing, when I was making the Architecture Academy several years ago, like I was making this museum scene and it was this large floor and you wanted it to look like people have walked on the floor, right? And I tried to find like a floor, like footprint pattern that's like suitable for architecture. So like a bunch of them together, there just weren't any. And so we actually created our own specifically for this purpose. So what we do is we set this to non-color data and then plug this into the roughness input of our dielectric shader. And what you'll find is it's a little bit hard to see, but you could sort of see it there in just sort of where the reflection is in front of the camera. It just adds, actually, if I just Control-Shift-Click on this, you'll be able to see it. But it adds this sort of grunge to the glossness part of the shader. So it sort of looks a little bit sticky, or like parts of it are more rougher than others. So it's sort of like a smudged sort of looking floor. Now, if you wanted to, by the way, if this UV map is, because it's using the same UV map for the tile, which is like ×4, we could make another UV map, set this to 1:1, just so that we know that it's proper scaled. And then if I scale this down, that's now proper. And then I could just use that UV map by using an input UV map, and then plug this into that specific image texture as the UV and set it to 1:1. And now it's at the proper sort of scale. But yeah, really it is up to you what you want to do. What you want to do. All right. So there we go. So we've got a nice sort of little sticky floor. And by the way, if you want to adjust this further, because now we don't have that handy little slider for the roughness anymore. So that's why I created the as part of that PBR node setup that you can download from Blender Guru, the less more slider, so that you can control the you can have more control whilst also still using the an image texture. I might dial that back just a little bit. So I want it to look a little bit like not a perfectly sharp reflection, which is what it was before. So I'll dial it back just a little bit more so that everywhere is just a little bit smoothed, but the texture will go on top of that and make certain areas even more smooth. So it should look nice. All right, now you don't have to do this, but what I'll do is now I'll do a quick render, set the samples up to something nice like 500. And for rendering, you want to make sure that your tiles are at a reasonable size. I use 256 by 256 because it is a, what do you call it? I'm using GPU rendering. Make sure you save it before you render, and let's see how this looks. All right, there we go. So it looks pretty good. Looks like a floor. You could see it's got that sort of, not sticky. You don't want it to look sticky, but it sort of looks like there's smudges, like footprints have walked across it. And it looks good. I mean, you could spend a little bit more time, you know, fine tuning it, maybe adding a little bit more variation across the whole surface, not these big dark patches. But honestly, the camera is really going to be viewing it from up here anyway, so like a little patch of it. So it's not really that big of a deal. I think it's fine. I think it's fine as is. So we've still got to make the countertop and the wall for the tiles. But before we can even see the wall, we need to make these planes here actually look like a shower glass, right? Because right now they are actually just a diffuse. They don't even have a material. So let's make them glass. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to steal this glass material, and I'm just going to put it over here. So just type in glass, and I'll do the same thing for this one. Glass material. And now this will make it look like glass, but we can actually do something a little bit more with it. So the glass, our shower glass here, is a little bit different, and we should treat it differently to the window glass. The window glass was just light shining through it, and it should be reflective. But in this case, we can actually see the thickness of the glass, and we're a little bit closer to it, and there's not light shining through it. So we can do a few other things, right? So to add a little bit of visual interest, I'm going to make the glass have, you know, like when you look at like a glass door and you look at it like side on, like the thickness of it, it has that sort of dark aqua sort of color to it. So we can do that in Blender. So first of all, let's make it a separate material so that we don't apply it to our glass over there. So I'm just going to click the little number next to it, and let's just call it glass shower. I've actually, this is the second time recording this part because I messed it up. So it's already got that name. So let's just shower space. I didn't know you could do that. You could have the exact same name but with a space at the end, and it works. Yeah, anyway. Okay, and I'll just make sure this has the same material. So Control L, material. Okay, they both got glass. Shower. So what I want to do, if I open up the node editor here, first thing, to give it that aqua little color there, what I'll do is I'll add in a volume absorption shader, and I'm going to drag this into the volume input of our material output. And what this will do, like there's two different types of volume. There's the volume scatter, and then there's the volume absorption. Scatter will just scatter the light around, which is fine for like clouds and a lot of other objects. Absorption will make sure that the light gets darker as it goes through. So that is the one that we actually want for glass. So I'm going to set this to be a little bit aqua colored like that, and then I'll set the density to 40. Which looks pretty dark on our little sphere here, but this is a preview, and it doesn't really preview depth very well. Like, you have to really see it on the object because every material is different. So now that I've done that, let me just actually just have a look. If I just Shift B on, oh, I haven't even got my screen keys tool turned on. Haven't been doing much modeling anyway, but just show you that. So I just, from the side on, I want it to sort of look like glass. And it does. Look at that. It's actually like a solid piece of, like it's got a thickness to it now. So that's really cool. The other thing I want to do is I want to make it look like every glass shower door which has water stuck to it, right? Because otherwise, like, it's just, you've just got a, like you can't really see the glass that's in front, like right here in front of the camera. So yeah, so that's pretty important. So to do that, I'm going to use another texture, which is on Polygon. So this is under the surface imperfections area. And we've got 3 right here: raindrops and streaks, complex, and then raindrops simple. Oh, and another one up there for just the streaks. So the one I'm going to use is this one, raindrops complex. And since raindrops don't actually have a color, they are just water, we only really need the normals. Now, this is the cool thing about these textures, and it's why I actually got our team to create it, was because I know, like, from firsthand, when you're trying to make a scene with like a wet window, for example, it's really hard to find textures for it, because most textures are photographs of the raindrops on a window, which is pointless for CG use, because it's a see-through object. You want it to actually refract like real glass, but you're now using the color data, which is completely wrong. You want it to actually look at the surface of the raindrops, and you can't convert a colored image of a raindrop into with a normal map. So we actually physically modeled these. All these little raindrops here were physically modeled and then baked and then made seamless. So yeah, they're pretty cool textures. I just want to say that. So I've actually already downloaded it. It's right here, Raindrops Complex, because this is the, like I said, the second time doing this part of the tutorial. Oh, before I do that, make sure we split the view here, go to the node editor, and I want to add it into this glass shader right here. So let me do that. Drag it in like that into there. Whoop. And just like whenever you're using any normal map, make sure you feed it through a normal map shader and set it to non-color data. And now that we've done that, you can see on our little preview there, it looks a little bit wet. So let's just have a look at how this looks. I think we probably only really need to preview the bottom part. Whoops. Oh, actually, I didn't even, it looks pretty blue, doesn't it? Our volume absorption shader is working pretty well. Let's dial back the saturation on that so it's not so obvious. A little bit blue is fine. Now, I think the normal map by itself is a little bit too high, the intensity of it. So I'm just going to dial it back to 0.5 so it's not so, looks like it's like bulbous, like popping off the screen. So it just looks a little bit like water. And you won't see this actually, because I did this in the last time I made the tutorial, last recording. You've got to UV unwrap your shower door. So sorry, I should have done that. So you just go UV unwrap, rotate it by 90 degrees, holding down Control. And then I just place it like, you don't know how big you want it. So I just, like this, and just sort of imagine how many raindrops you would have, or water droplets you would have on a shower door. So I think sort of something like that is pretty good. And you need to do the same thing for that one there as well. But I've already done it. And now I'll just do a quick render of this. I'll increase the sample so that we can actually see it a little bit better. And I'll set this to 60. And let's just make sure that our glass looks good before we continue on. All right, it's a little grainy. Well, it's very grainy, but you can sort of make out the little raindrops on there, the water droplets. So that's good enough for me. I like it. Looks like real water droplets. Cool. So that'll just add a little bit of visual interest, and you can't really see it now because there's nothing really for it to refract. But when we add in the tile behind it, which I guess we can do right now, you'll actually start to see it. So we want there to be a tile right where the shower is, because I noticed looking on House that a lot of houses now, they have like different tile or different wall patterns depending on what. Actually, I guess most bathrooms now actually don't they? They have a separate tile just for the shower because it's often expensive to do the entire bathroom. So I'll just have it right here. So obviously, if you want to make a material that only appears on certain parts of the mesh, you have to add geometry first. So I'm adding in a loop cut, and I'll just drag it across just so that it meets where that, actually I might just yeah, sort of like the tile sort of comes out a little bit over there. And the camera won't really see it, so it doesn't really matter about this one, but I'll do it anyway. Just add a little bit of tile right there. All right, and then we'll make the walls. So this will be the wall diffuse. This is just the white wall, and then a separate one behind it, and then this is going to be the marble tiles, like that. And then I will select these two faces and hit assign, and just so that I can tell them apart. Can I even see them? I will set the viewport color to be slightly, I don't know, a little bit blue and dark or something like that, so that we can make it. Oh wait, I set it for the wrong one. Of course I did. Try that again. A little bit darker and set it to blue. It didn't work. Oh, there we go. Okay, that's why you need to have the viewport thing on. That kind of helps. All right, before we do anything, let's just UV unwrap that wall so that we can, so that when we add in our texture, we'll actually be able to see it. So you want to add in a loop cut like, you know, like you were, you know, you want to unfold it. So I just need to add in one loop cut right there. Oh, sorry, not loop cut, a seam, sorry, seam. And then I'll set that to unwrap. So now it's like it's unwrapped the entire room. It's unraveled it like it was made of paper, which is good. Great. And now let's go back to Polygon. And yeah, let's go back to the marble section. We're changing the way this is arranged right now. So the categories will appear on the home page, and you will you won't have this problem where you click the X, then it goes back to category. And yeah, it's a little bit disconjointed now. We're fixing it. We're improving stuff as we go. The one we're going to use, I mean, you could use any of them you want, but I like this one here. This is a sort of a texture that's found a lot in a lot of interiors now. So it gives it that sort of luxury sort of feel. So I'm going to use that. I'm just going to use the diffuse at 1K, which is fine. And I'll make sure that we are in the node editor, Shift F3 for that. And whilst that's downloading, let's just add in the dielectric shader, the PBR dielectric shader, which you'll remember from the PBR tutorial, is it's for most, like 90% of materials, that anything that's not metal uses a dielectric material, essentially. Volumes are different, but they're not really objects, are they? Like a cloud, is that an object? Is that a material? It's more just a combination of lots of water droplets, right? I have no idea what I'm talking about. All right, so we've got the marble tiles there. I mean, I guess we can, since we've got it, we can use the normal as well. So let's download the normals. Oh man, it's getting hot. I haven't got the air conditioner on because like someone told me like, oh, it's bad to have the air conditioner on all the time. It's bad for your health. I don't know why, but it's bad for your health. Apparently. No, it was fine when I started recording, and now it's heating up. And yes, Australians do have Christmas in the summer. So we listen to all your Christmas music, and it makes no sense to us. White Christmas, dreaming of a white Christmas, snowdrops falling on, no, raindrops fall, snow, you know all the songs, the snowy songs about Christmas. They're pointless. All right, let's have a look. Oh my goodness, I'm all over the place. That's why I shouldn't try to talk whilst I'm tutorial. All right, there we go. Okay, now those tile sizes are a direct reflection of the this thing, the size of these. So if we want those tiles bigger, just scale this up. I think I want them to be about twice as small, so I scaled it by 2. And you will actually see, like, you want the edge of it to line up with the actual tile edge. So right here. So I don't even know where that actually is. Let me just switch that to face select mode. Let me select that face. Okay, there it is. Now I know. So I'll bring this over and I'll just position it right on the edge of this grid so that I know that that's where the texture stops. Did I get that perfect? Almost perfect. Okay. Lovely. All right, I'll bring back the glass. Okay. So now we've got the glass, we've got the tiles behind it, we've got the floor. Now we just need to do the countertop. Countertop. So First of all, if you want to make any adjustments to your countertop, now is your chance. So I'm just going to extend this countertop a little bit because it looked a little bit odd with the wood sticking out a little bit. And this part, I'll drag that out a little bit as well. And also, when we bring back our objects, there is normally, or I don't know, I noticed this looking on House, that a lot of houses have this, a lot of houses on House have this little splashback area, which is sort of raised. So I'll just add a loop cut here and a loop cut here. And then I'll just, whoops, grab just these two areas and I'll bring them up. Not too much, but a little bit. And then I'll move this down a little bit so it looks a little bit smoothed. I mean, if you really cared, you could properly smooth it with an actual curve. But right now, I'm just piecing it together. And I'll add in a bevel because it's pretty important that the countertop looks like it's got a smooth edge. Otherwise, it really does look like you will hurt yourself on it. Now, if you see this happen, that's because your mesh has normals that are the incorrect way around. So the bevel doesn't know how to treat it. So if you have that, select everything, Control N, and now it's normal. Now it's normal the normals. I'm horrible at jokes. So you might be saying, Andrew, what about the sink? Well, we're not really going to be able to see it. It's going to be like wasted effort almost, but we'll do it anyway. So I'll just add in a loop cut right here, drag that over, another loop cut, 2 loop cuts, select this loop, move that over to where we want the sink to start, and then I'll move it back to where we want it to end. And then I just delete these 2 faces and then connect them up. Come on. Oh no. I thought it did everything automatically. F? Yeah, there we go. That's pretty good. It's not that bad. Just make sure that the normals are correct. That's good. Lovely. All right. Now, the reason we did all this now is because we're going to UV unwrap it now. And adding geometry later on is never a good idea. So, UV unwrapping it. You want to treat it like it's paper, like I always say. So, yeah, just take, it's really hard to select just that loop there. So I'm just going to move that over. That little imperfection's totally fine, by the way. You don't have to worry about fixing it. Like having a countertop that's slightly smaller than the thing, that's just an imperfection that happens in everyday life anyway, because builders are a little bit shoddy, as I have painfully just learned myself. We just bought this new house. Well, it's a 2-year-old house. Very nice. Yeah, very nice. It's like we did the proper like building and pest inspection before we bought it. And did all this stuff. We spoke to the owner. The owner is a draftsman who is like a narc for getting things done properly. So he made sure he put proper supports and extra stuff around the house. And it was lovely. We've lived in it for 2 months. And then I came back from the Blender conference in Europe. And what do we find when we walk in? But the bathroom, my bathroom, is like... there's like structural problems with it. So it's like the door doesn't shut properly now. And there's like cracks going up the wall. Lovely, right? So I called up a structural engineer today. He wants $650 to come and check it out. Hopefully the insurance will cover it. And anyways, thanks for being a part of my life. Just filling you in on that, on just how things are going. But anyways, let me add another loop cut here. Sorry, another seam. You got to do something with this dead tutorial time. That's why I don't think I could ever do a tutorial on car modeling, because it would literally be like 6 hours of the most repeated steps. Click here, click here, click here. And I don't think I've got 6 hours of rants or things to talk about. But anyways, all right, so we've UV unwrapped it. Yay. Now let's do the material. This one's going to be pretty easy. Just going to use the same PBR dielectric shader. And I'm just going to put something in the color. We don't worry about the reflection, anything else. I'm just going to use, I mean, we could use any of these. I think I might have even tried this one, but I'm just going to use this one since I know that it'll work. I'm going to use the diffuse texture. Once it downloads, there we go. drag that into Blender, and this is going to be our marble texture. Now, if you want to, by the way, if you want to preview how a texture is appearing, just go into textured viewport shading mode. And if you don't see it, like Blender has this weird way of like how it works, but it'll use whatever is selected in the node editor. So if you've got more than one texture, you've sometimes, like this case, it's, no, in this one, it's got like that one, but anyways. So now we can see it. So now what I'll do is I'll go to the, UV image editor, and I'll scale this up. Let's try by 2. You know, however you want your marble to look. Like that. That looks like a marble countertop to me. It's pretty good. Lovely. All right. And if you want, you could just make it the roughness just look a little bit. What is going on? Why is my computer so slow? Oof. 0.02. I can hear it whirring up. Maybe it's the heat. All right. Let's do a render with this right now. Whilst that's going on, I will turn the air conditioner on. Let's see. All right, we are back, and we are 1 degree cooler. Thank goodness. Getting a heat stroke. So this is our render right now. Looks pretty good. There's a couple of things we want to fix, and then we want to add in the trees to our background there, because this over here is the biggest glaring error to our render, having a big black border there. I mean, even if it was solid white, having trees outside of the render will really help sort of just give a natural environment to it. Before we do that, we'll do a couple of final little adjustments. So one thing is you might notice that there's a lot of, I mean, they're not that obvious, but there's fireflies around. And that is because underneath our light piles down here, Blender, or Cycles, is rendering caustics for everything. And I personally just don't see a use to them. So I'm disabling them. I've tried to stay with caustics, but in almost every situation, they just make the render worse because there's fireflies. There's fireflies everywhere. And I don't know. I really want caustics, but I just haven't been able to ever get a nice result with Cycles. All right, a couple of other things. You can see it down there. There's a gap where I've extended my cabinet, but not the baseboard, so I'll move that along. This handle here should be the same material as our mirror, which is the chrome. This one, I'll just call it chrome actually, so we don't get confused. So I'll use that same one, which is, by the way, it's just a glossy shader. That's all it is. And what else? Okay, the glass looks really good actually. I really like the blue tint to it. It helps. Okay. That's right. So with the sink, right? You've got a sink here. This wouldn't exist if you had a sink and then a drawer directly underneath of it. There has to be an area for that. So that drawer wouldn't work if that was there. So what I'll do instead, I wasn't thinking when I planned this out, I will move those drawers along. I will put this right about there. And I will instead, I'll grab this part of our mesh, right? And then I'll drag it along. There we go. Now they're all a little bit wider. And then I will take this part of this mesh. I'll make these doors a little bit shorter. Move that across. So that this is now squarely in... Actually, I might need to... it's close enough. I just want it so that you know how, like, this stuff, it seems so narky and like, who cares? Like, it's a digital place. Nobody is actually going to notice if it doesn't practically work. But you think that, and then you post your work online, and it's the one thing everybody points out, you know? So I think our eyes, like, I think when you're working on the scene, you're a little bit lenient to the errors, because I think also you personally know how much work is involved to fix up tiny little errors, and so you just subconsciously just think like, nobody will care, it's not that big of a deal. But I think people care a lot more than we think they do, so that's why you just want to fix it. And I've learned from doing tutorials that if I don't mention it or fix it in the tutorial, then people will constantly they'll say, that looks weird. Your tutorial has that problem in it. So I try and do it. All right, good. More rambling. Good. Keep it strong. I think I might actually, I'll use chrome for these little handles here because I don't like that, the default material that came with, which is that sort of soft looking gloss. I'm not a big fan of that. Okay, cool. All right, so we got the chrome, we got that. Everything is pretty well fixed. I mean, if you were a real narc, you might want to move your baseboard out of the way so it's not in the shower, but yeah, I'll leave it. Let somebody complain about it. Right, now, the final thing we're going to add to the scene before we really finish it off is add the trees. So, again, these are on polygon. So we're going to polygon, and they're underneath the nature section. I think we're going to have a proper section for it at some point, but it's underneath nature right now. We've got a bunch of leaves and stuff, so I'm just going to select trees. And it's still leaves. I think we should remove these from the tree section so we can actually see these things. But anyways, okay, so we can use a proper, let me see here. We want the long ones. These, okay, there we go. These backdrops right here. So these are alpha masked for you. These are very hard to find online. I got Renante Martinez, the Blender guy, who works for us. I asked him to go about hiring and finding photographers for this job. And you wouldn't believe how hard it is to find photographers to photograph tree lines. Because generally speaking, there's really only a couple that's within like driving distance of most people where you can stand in a field and photograph trees. But they're so necessary for 3D work. So anyways, download one of them. And what we'll do is we will use, if you don't already have it enabled, it's the images as planes add-on. And that's important. I'm going to move to layer 3 now and we'll add it in because we'll go to File, Import Images as Planes. And what this does is it allows you to, instead of grabbing the actual download, I'm just going to get it from our library. Here we go. These are all the textures. This add-on, what we're in right now, is it allows you to select an image. So the one I might use is sort of overcast. That's the sort of look we're going for. So something like that. Or not too sunny. Something like that or like that. Yeah, that one looks there pretty good. And then here where it says use alpha. So what it will do is it will automatically add an image, give the material with this use alpha already set up. I click import, and it's created a plane at the exact dimensions of that image that we've used. So it's really good whenever you want to have like these things, billboards, which is, I think, I've never actually checked, but I believe billboards is the term that you use in 3D for something like this, where it's like an object pretending to look like an object with an image map to it to look real, but it's not real. Yeah. All right, so I think that should work. Let me just have a look at this area. Get another drink here. Hey, there we go. So that's pretty good, actually. It's not terrible. You know, you could move it backwards or forwards if you want. Might move it a little bit back just so that we can see the tops of the trees there. And maybe I'll even move it up just so it looks like it's sort of on a hill a little bit. No, I want to see the trees. Tops of the trees. Let's move it back down. All right, pretty good. And then I'll add one just behind the house as well, because our mirror here, you can sort of slightly see out the window there. Depending on where you've got your camera, you'll see more or less of it. But there we go. It's that easy to add the trees. There is a number of different ways you could add trees, by the way. That's just one of them. Sometimes I find it so annoying to try and get the light to look right on the trees that I actually just do it in Photoshop or in the compositor. So you render like this glass here, you could give it a separate pass index. Then in the render layers, make sure you check if it was an object index, and then you can separate it, and then you can add an image like that. But this is I guess in this case, this is the sort of easiest one. So that's the one that we're doing. All right. And now that that's done, really now it's up to finding the right camera angle for your scene. So I remember when I was making the Architecture Academy, I interviewed a bunch of the well-known architecture people in the industry, and I asked them, what's a common mistake a lot of people make? And one that a lot of them said is people try and show the whole scene in their render, which is not a good idea because it just feels too wide and you can't take it all in. So don't be afraid to increase your focal length and show just a small part of your scene. So now that we're all online, you can post multiple renders in on ArtStation. You can post a whole bunch of them. So don't just think of like one render. Think of zooming in on specific parts of your scene, but sort of up closer than what it is right now. So I'm trying to give a little bit of depth to it, which is why I've got the camera sort of at an angle, but let's just see how this looks. Okay, I think this should look okay. All right, let's give this a render. I'll crank up the samples a little bit so that we can see the render, see it a little bit better. All right, and let's see how this looks. All right, we are back, and the scene looks pretty good overall. It's, got a couple of things we could change. I might make this double door here since this large one, I think it works for a corner, but just by itself in the middle there looks a little bit odd. The glass, I adjusted the glass already outside of the render. I dropped the density to 10. I'm eyeballing it. Honestly, don't copy all my values. Like I said in the first one, you can do a lot better, a lot more perfection by yourself than I can do in the time of a tutorial. So let's make some very quick changes. So let's just, I'll just delete this door, and then I'll just make two of them. Yeah. Like so. All right, and then just to save time, I'll just make that one a little bit smaller. Ah, come on. Got to select this middle piece. If I can find it. Where is the middle piece? I thought I had a middle piece, like that one. Oh well. Duplicate that. All right. Good. I was watching 12 Years a Slave whilst that was rendering. And that is, it's not exactly a light-hearted movie. It's really depressing. It just makes you feel guilty. I haven't done nothing. No. Australia's got its own dark history, which I know nothing really about. Really, that's quite sad, but it's true. I've done more research, or I know more about America's pastimes than Australia's. Why am I talking about this? I'm just fixing stuff. So those trees there weren't visible in the render as well because we moved the camera very slightly, and I'm not sure. I don't know. I thought they were actually visible, like from this view. But anyway, the final render. All right, and then the sun itself. I think the sun is a little bit too hot. I'll dial it back just a tad, and I'll add a little bit of color to it. Actually, I think it's probably too much. Like the sun is like the saturation you got to be really careful with because it's really, what's the word? It's really intense. I think the more energy you give it, the more saturated it looks. I have no idea. All right. Now what I'll do, I might just move rotate the sun a little bit more so we can sort of get it thrown a little bit more across everything. I don't know. I'm just eyeballing everything right now. All right, so that looks pretty good. Now, this should hopefully be the final render, so any other changes you want to make, now's your chance. Let's see how this looks. And ladies and gentlemen, we have finished. Congrats if you have made it up to this point. Congratulations to you. If you've only watched to this point, consider following along. You learn a lot more when you actually do it rather than just watch. But anyways, this is basically it. The rest of this, like if I was to continue this to sort of make a final render that I'd put on ArtStation or something like that, I'd probably pay a little bit more attention to the angle. So I might raise this up a little bit. I might, put something more in this corner, some other stuff there. But honestly, this is the essence of the final render. So if you are looking at the final render and you're thinking, wait a minute, Andrew, this one looks way better than what you did over here in the tutorial. So obviously there's a few differences to it. So I added a few things. I did a few things differently that I didn't do in the tutorial, and that's mostly just due to time constraints. People don't want to watch 5-hour-long videos on YouTube, believe it or not. So I added in this little alcove in the shower, not a big deal. I gave a different tile pattern to the tile in the shower there, again using one of the new marble patterns from Polygon. I added a towel on the corner there, which helps sort of balance the left and right from the pot plant over there. A little bunch of flowers, some vases, some little soap dispenser, and stuff like that. The vanity itself, you'll see, is definitely different to our one there. And this was just to try and give it more of a traditional style, traditional sort of feel. But you could see that, you know, they are pretty similar. This one I did have to model it by hand, and it was just a pain. So that's why I didn't do that in the tutorial. I also added in some slats across there, again, just to add some visual interest. I put a bathtub in there to balance it and give the scene more depth. But overall, the biggest one, and people that have been following me on Twitter might be thinking, why don't you talk about the color management? So for this render, for the first time ever, I used a new color management in Blender called Filmic. So if you search on Twitter, #Filmic_Blender, there's this new color management that Troy Sabatica has put out, which treats the light like real light behaves in the real world. Very hard to explain, and honestly, I didn't include it in this tutorial for this very reason. It deserves its own tutorial. So, but just to show you, you know, sort of what it is, it's this film-like thing here, and you set that to log encoding base or whatever like that, and then you crank up your light so that it looks like real light. So you would use, like, my sun energy ended up being like 135 as opposed to 4, but it gives you a lot more range for the intensities. So basically that allowed me to use a really powerful sun, which really bounced it off into the rest of the scene. Anyway, I'm just including this as a footnote to the tutorial because I know some people might be curious about, you know, the big lighting differences. That's basically it. So I'm going to do a full tutorial, hopefully January at the earliest, to talk all about it. I need to fully understand it myself because it's a big rabbit hole that you go down on. Go down in. But anyways, so there you go, guys. That was the tutorial. I hope you can create something cool with it. If you do, please share it in the comments on Blender Guru. If you click the link in the description, that'll take you to Blender Guru, and I really like seeing what you guys make with it. So if you make something cool, post it there. Post it on Twitter, Facebook, whatever it is you want. And I look forward to seeing it. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Oh, and one final thing as well. If you are interested in taking architecture further, I've got this video here. I'll put up a link here so you can watch it. But it's a complete introduction to architecture from the Architecture Academy, which is my other course where you can learn architecture fully, like 10 modules, doing all sorts of interiors and exteriors. So anyways, check out that video if you're interested. And otherwise, thank you for watching. Bye.